and the Authority, with the Ghana Maritime Authority as the host organization. Secretary General of the International Maritime Organization, Kitak Lim, revealed that this year, the IMO is seeking to introduce an upgraded strategy on the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions from ships, which is expected to set the framework for the way forward in support of decarbonizing shipping.
The revised strategy, containing a basket of technical economy measures, will provide the necessary certainty for all stakeholders to invest in future fuels and the ship-related technologies. And it will be the necessary catalyst to unlock new opportunities for African countries, particularly in renewable fuel production, but also from retrofitting ships and digitalizing port operation.
He said the IMO will support member states, including developing countries, implement measures to ensure that no one is left behind in the green agenda.
I know that decarbonization presents challenges for many developing countries. At IMO, we are committed to examining and addressing the impact of the measure we adopt to achieve this end. With this in mind, we are also committed to supporting member states to unlock the potential that green shipping presents. I'm confident that African countries stand in a prime position to unlock this potential.
Ghana's Minister for Transport, Kweku Ofori-Asiamah, said, while Ghana's government embraces the green agenda, there is the need for developing states to be considered.
Developing countries remain challenged with a lack of green transportation infrastructure, which would have ensured a sustainable future for us all. It is imperative, therefore, that the impact of measures on states, including developing countries, and in particular those classified as least developed countries and small island developing countries, should be considered. They should never be left behind.
The Director General of the Ghana Maritime Authority, Thomas Kofi Alonsi, encouraged African states to open themselves up to unlocking potentials in renewable energy.
As the maritime industry forges ahead in its quest to attain a zero-carbon society, the need for cleaner fuels and its associated technologies would also increase significantly and urgently. Africa, however, has the potential to be a major ship energy source, as the continent has vast and untapped renewable resources that position us to benefit from the green transition and maritime decarbonization.
Speaking on the sidelines of the conference, Danish Ambassador to Ghana, Tom Noren, acknowledged the fruitful collaborations that have existed between Denmark and Ghana in promoting sustainable shipping.
We've had almost a decade of very, very close cooperation, focusing on a number of issues, from training, for instance, TugCat pilots and such, training them for the huge tanker, the huge container ships that are coming to port, and all these things. This is in the past, but of course we all recognize that climate change and the consequences of climate change have a huge impact on our lives, and action is needed.
Industry experts in Ghana during the week gathered in Accra for a business seminar that sought to deliberate on pertinent developments in the Ghanaian economy and their impact and mitigating factors for German Ghanaian businesses. Organized by the Delegation of German Industry and Commerce in Ghana, also known as AHK Ghana, the seminar, dubbed Ghana's Economic Outlook for 2023, sought to enlighten individuals and businesses about the outlook of the economy and how businesses can hedge against the current economic challenges Ghana is facing. Subjects for discussion included the new VAT Amendment Act, the reversal of the discount on benchmark values, and the government debt restructuring program.
I mean, basically, why did the government reverse the discount?
Yes, with the reversal, I think it was one against WTO. That is not acceptable. That it distorts the market. So if you look at somebody buys a particular item comes into the country and then we didn't sell it. So why do you give discount in the first place? So initially they decided that it was going to level the playing field.
Okay.
Let's say A buys a particular commodity from a particular source based on maybe his commercial level. He buys at a certain price. And then B also buys at a different commercial level. He buys the same item and the price is different. It's not wrong. In WTO terms and the rules we apply, it's not wrong.
Okay.
But for us to sit down and say that we are going to just apply a particular value and then make it equal to the two, which was wrong. It was distorting the market. That's the first place. Secondly, we lost a lot of revenue. For the years that we applied the discount, according to our estimate, we lost about 3 billion.
So I will tell you, what they were doing, they were just putting pressure on business community. Then what did business people do? We diverted the cargo. Because they were not accepting transactional values. Cargo were not going to Ivory Coast and Togo and found its way to the market, denying the state they needed taxation. And we did our own analysis. We were importing about 6,000 different products into this country. The ones that we thought we had some local capacity and competitive enough to grow was about 48.
So you just needed the
reverse on 48. That was our argument. That the rest, the government feels that revenue is not an issue, and they reduce it for all those products. We don't have a problem.
Is that what government did for you?
Well, in the reverse, they reversed everything.
A delegate for the delegation of German Industry and Commerce in Ghana, Begdart Hellman, said Ghana's competitive advantage for foreign businesses is waning with time.
From a German point of view, and when I asked my team at the end of January about German companies' interest into Ghana in the beginning of this year, someone told me Ivory Coast and Senegal are picking up. So Ghana is not anymore the only country in Western Africa for German companies to look into.
The Center for Maritime Law and Security Africa, working with the Center for Coastal Management of the University of Cape Coast, has launched a Promoting Local Capacity to Address the Destabilizing Impact of Foreign Distant Vessels project. The project, funded by the U.S. State Department and coordinated by the U.S. Embassy in Ghana, is being implemented in 7 countries, namely Benin, Cameroon, Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Senegal, and Mauritania. Ahead of the project implementation, stakeholders in the fisheries governance space, including government officials, industry, non-governmental organizations, academia, and media, have participated in a webinar to discuss the action plan of the project. The team lead at Semlos Africa, Dr. Kamal Dean Ali, explained that this project seems to bring to light the negative effects of foreign distance vessels activities on the fisheries sector and work with key stakeholders, especially governments, to mitigate them.
The language or the message is not that it is entirely negative, but we must address the negative impact of it. What are some of these negative impacts? The foreign distant fishing vessels are in a space where also we have our coastal communities that are also fishing. So the fishery resource is also important for the livelihood of our coastal communities and the economic activity across the sub-region. So you must seek to balance the interests of the distant water fishing vessels as well as that of the local communities. The second thing is that you have to, at every time, balance the economic returns that you get from that as well as what they also get. It is an investment. Are we getting enough from it? The argument may be that we are either getting inadequate, but the argument also will be that we are perhaps even reaping too much.
Industry, however, also argued that other governance and technical issues pose dire implications on the fisheries sector, thus also needing equal attention.
When it comes to manning the vessel, you need certain expertise, and currently, locally, we don't have it. So you see the top echelon of the queue coming from China. We see an opportunity because one of the objectives of this project is to look at ownership and then look at investment. So we want to leverage or explore this project, whether this project is able to bring in other investors so that we will have competition.
Not just that, we need to also build our financial capacity. The banking sector in Ghana has no clue what happens in the fishing industry. So it's so difficult for us to have any discussion, and especially with the kind of interest rate they charge. You cannot just go to the banks and get loans to go into the fishing industry. They consider that a very high risk area. Probably one of the things we need to do is to start engaging with the banks. Probably government would, in its budget, would need to start putting aside something to support locals to at least be able to acquire their own vessels.
So those were happenings in the port and shipping industry in the course of the week. It's now time for us to take the word of the day, and the word of the day is bareboat charter. Bareboat charter.
Bareboat charter is an arrangement for the chartering or hiring of a vessel whereby no crew or provisions are included as part of the agreement. The charterer provides crew, bunkers, and pays all operational costs.
We're not zooming into our discussion proper tonight, and tonight we're taking a look at green shipping. We're taking a look at it from the African perspective, and with us to do the discussion tonight is Mr. Boakye Boampong. Mr. Boakye Boampong is the Director in charge of Maritime Services at the Ghana Maritime Authority, GMA. Let me say good evening to you, sir, and welcome to Iron Port.
Good evening, Kennedy, and thank you for having me. Good evening to your viewers.
Absolutely. Is this your first time on the show?
Yes, this is my first time on your show. Many happy returns.
We welcome you to the family. All right, so also to join us will be Jacob Hogard, who is Director in charge of Climate and Green Transition at the Danish Maritime Authority. He's joined us already on Zoom. Good evening, Jacob.
Good evening to all of you. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I'll start with you, Nana Boakye Boampong. And in simple terms, when we say green shipping, what exactly do we mean?
Okay, so simply green shipping is the term used to describe the carriage of goods and services by shipping in a sustainable manner. As you are aware, shipping is really the only cost-effective way of transporting any large amount of goods over any great distance. Increasingly, there have been discussions on the effects of shipping on the climate. Shipping contributes to about 3% of climate emissions, and so green shipping seeks to reduce the 3% over a certain period of time. So in simple terms, green shipping can be termed as doing the business of shipping in a more sustainable and environmentally friendly manner.
All right. So I think in recent times there are calls for Africa to join, the global green shipping agenda. Why do you think this has become so imperative?
Okay, so the calls for Africa to join the global green shipping agenda has been there for a while, as you have rightly alluded to. At the IMO currently, there are discussions on the adoption. In fact, a program was adopted in 2018 known as the IMO's Initial Greenhouse Strategy. And in the strategy, it seeks to reduce emissions from ships by 50% in the year 2050 and to net it off to 0% at the turn of the century. Africa, as you know, enjoys a great amount of shipping, and so we would need to join the bandwagon because take it or leave it, whatever decisions that are taken at the global stage would have an impact on the way we do business. And so it is imperative that during the discussions, Africa also goes to table and negotiates and also gets a good deal for itself. Talking about the IMO greenhouse strategy that was adopted in 2018.
Yes.
This year, during this year's meeting, there is a review. It is due for review, and the next couple of months is very crucial for the reviews in that strategy. And so it is imperative that African countries go to the IMO, a common voice, and also put on the table the impacts that these things are going to have on the way we do shipping business. And that is why it is important. And that was one of the main things that we took into consideration into convening the Green Shipping Conference that just happened last week. It is just to bring to the fore the importance for Africa to go to table and also present their issues for it to be factored into the review of the IMO's initial greenhouse gas strategy.
All right, when we'll come back, I'll have your take on what your impression about the conference is. That's the first in Africa, the International Green Shipping Conference held here in Accra a couple of days ago. But let me go to Jacob and find out from you. Jake, we cannot talk about green shipping in the world or globally without mentioning the Danish Maritime Authority and Denmark in particular. Why is that? You seem to be a leader in championing this particular cause of green shipping.
Thank you. Yes, we are. But first, a few words on our role as a green front runner in general. So Denmark decided to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in 2030 by 70% compared to the level of in 1990. And we've also decided to become a climate neutral society by 2045 at latest, taking into account the Paris Agreement on limiting the global temperature to 1.5 degrees. We believe that the climate challenges are global. Therefore, Denmark must be a leading nation also on the international climate efforts. We have to inspire and influence the rest of the world. Furthermore, we believe that Denmark has a historical and moral responsibility to take lead. Talking about shipping, Denmark has one of the largest commercial fleets measured by operated tonnage, and Denmark is home to the second largest container company in the world. So therefore, we believe that we must be a leader also in green shipping. We must be able to influence the global goals and make sure that we accelerate green shipping.
All right, that's awesome. Can you tell us about the zero emission, shipping mission? Zero emission shipping mission. What is it about?
Well, the zero emission shipping mission is a public-private partnership which was created by Denmark in 2021. Other co-leads include the US, Norway, the Maersk Mc-Kinney Møller Center for Zero Carbon Shipping, and the Global Maritime Forum. Their members include the UK, Singapore, India, South Korea, Morocco, and Ghana. So the goal of the partnership is to demonstrate that commercially, zero-emission shipping is commercially viable in 2030. So we need to show that it can happen and that ships can actually run on alternative fuels, that we have the required infrastructure and ports in place, and that we can actually make it work in practice.
That's awesome. I just want to find out from you once again some of the things that you are doing by the Danish Maritime Authority in Denmark to ensure that your operations, as far as shipping is concerned, are as green as possible. For which reason you have, taken the lead to lead a charge for, global, green shipping.
Well, first of all, it's important to bear in mind that shipping is global by nature. Therefore, the rules of the game should primarily be globally, and they should be regulated by the IMO. So we try to influence the IMO to be as ambitious as possible. But what can we do from a Danish perspective? Well, the Danish Maritime Authority is in charge of approving new vessels capable of running on zero-emission fuels. So we are here to approve these new designs. Even though we don't have an existing regulation in an IMO, we come up with innovative solutions and try to influence the design for the future. So that's one way of seeing it. Another way of seeing it is that we have formed public-private partnerships in Denmark on shipping. So we include all the shipping associations, the companies capable of doing innovative designs. We have reforms with the government, discussions on what can be done to promote green shipping also in Denmark. So as a result of these public-private partnerships also in Denmark, the government has come up with a national green tax reform, whereby you tax carbon emissions from not only shipping but also from other industries. Another example is subsidies for the electrification of domestic ferries. So there are things happening also domestically in Denmark.
Okay, awesome. So I'll come back to you, but let me come into the studio and go to Nana Boakye Boampong and find out from you what your impression or assessment of the just ended conference on green shipping in Africa that's in Accra is, and some of the issues that came up that you think that are worth sharing with our audience.
The conference was a huge success to begin with. We were able to convene about 20 countries from African maritime administrations who attend meetings at IMO and to speak about the opportunities that would avail in terms of the green shipping. What came to light was the fact that we all agreed that there was a regulatory uncertainty, as has just been alluded by Jacob from Denmark, and the fact that there is a need to have certainty in the industry, because it is this certainty that would drive investments for ship owners to know which way they are going. And so that was one of the main takeaways. And then for Africans, we realized that, okay, we have a challenge with finances, the unavailability of financial resources to undertake research and development in some of these new areas. Again, the lack of technical and operational capacities in our region is another thing that has been identified. And finally, we were also able to identify the port infrastructure deficiency, which invariably comes with costs. And so we have been able to identify some of these gaps in the African region, and so we are going to look at ways of tackling some of these things. Thank you.
Now, if you come to Ghana as a country, you sit with the Maritime Authority as Director of Maritime Services. I just want to find out from you what your assessment is of our performance in terms of our quest to join, this global agenda for green shipping. Where are we? Are we still crawling, or we are somewhat?
Okay, so for Ghana as a country, we have, our fleet. We do not have the numbers on our flags, but then we always ensure that we tie our regulations to the globally accepted levels. And so when you look at the sulfur cap, when it came into force, the Maritime Authority issued the necessary operational guidelines, and our policy control officers are ensuring that when you are entering Ghanaian ports, you burn fuels that do not emit sulfur oxides in excess of the 0.5%. And so although we are crawling, we are ensuring that we do not open our space for anybody.
All right. Let me go to Jacob. Jacob, let me find out from you. You mentioned some of the key initiatives you have taken in Denmark to ensure that your shipping activities are as green as possible, for which reason you are one of the leaders championing green shipping globally. I just want to find out from you, first of all, what your perception or assessment is of Africa in our quest to join the global agenda of green shipping. And then when you are done with that, you now come and tell me what your impression about the recent conference that you attended here in Accra is.
Well, I think Africa in general and Ghana in particular are moving along. So you need to start with some of the low-hanging fruits that are obviously a good idea, a good business case. For example, investment in energy efficiency. Also for fishing vessels, You could do investments on onshore power supply at the ports. You could make the ports more efficiently, more sustainable. And you're already doing that. But I believe it's a good idea to start on the low-hanging fruits where you can see a quick return, so to say.
All right. So I just wanted to tell us, you mentioned some of the initiatives that you are undertaking in Denmark to make your shipping green. I just want to find out from you which of these initiatives can be replicated on the African continent or in Africa.
I think the idea of having public-private partnerships where you can meet between business associations, government ministries, authorities, and have a good discussion what did. That's a good idea. I think that can be used, replicated also in Ghana. Because we need the perspective from the private sector to know which kind of legislation do we need, which kind of framework conditions would spur investments in infrastructure, in the future of fuels, but also in the ports. So again, public-private partnerships where you can have discussions on the needed framework conditions. That's a good idea, and that could be replicated in Ghana.
Awesome. And so, are you able to lay a finger or pinpoint a particular reason why Denmark is showing so much interest in Africa in terms of going green in shipping? Is there any particular reason?
Yes, I would say that both Africa in general and Ghana in particular are important to Denmark for many reasons, both historically. But we believe that the green transition of shipping can help unlock investments in renewable energy. Because once you know that the demand is there, you will also have more investments in the production of renewable energy. Also, investments in energy efficiency, in infrastructure for zero-emission fuels, these are important first steps that can not only mitigate climate change by reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, but they can also create new green jobs. So that's a good business case, we believe. So that's important that Ghana and Africa accelerate the green transition. It's a good idea in itself for the climate, but also for business.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. You're still sticking with us. I would come to the studio and then find out from Nana Boaja. Going green is a capital-intensive venture. And Africa, we don't have those resources to be able to match our global counterparts, those in the developed world and all that. And I just want to find out from you whether you have an idea of what the International Maritime Organization is doing to support African countries to pace up, and to be able to match up with, the global counterparts in terms of, going green.
Okay, so for the International Maritime Organization, they are basically the global rule-setting body, and whatever regulations that they come out with is based on consensus. And so at discussions in IMO, the views and then the developmental stages of every country is taken into consideration. At the last council, just at the last council meeting in July last year, a fund was established to assist developing countries, including the LDCs and the SIDs, just to participate in ongoing discussions at IMO. That shows that IMO has the will to include and take the views of every member state, and that is a good step. Again, when you look into the IMO's initial greenhouse gases strategy, it has a number of short, medium, and long-term measures. Embedded in the medium-term measures is a market-based measure. Right. And this market-based measure is expected to introduce a fund. And this fund is envisaged to make about $60 billion on a yearly basis. And this money may be championed into assistance to the developing countries, particularly the LDCs and the SIDs. But what is of importance is that Africa must go to the table and table their needs during the discussion stage, so that in coming up with a formula for disbursements, our needs will be taken into consideration, and then a chunk of this money would be allocated to us just to bring us up to speed with our developing counterparts. And so for IMO, I believe they are taking everybody along and just ensuring that we have just and equitable transition. Thank you.
Okay, so is that level playing field created for Africa to be able to voice its concerns and, like you rightly said, table its issues for them to be taken on board?
Yes, that level playing field has always been evident at the IMO. As I indicated earlier, every decision of IMO is based on consensus. So if instruments are being discussed, in the end, whatever you table, Africa has 54 countries. The voice of 54 countries cannot be taken for naught. And that is the only way we can ensure that our concerns are taken into consideration. We should bear in mind that whatever decision that is taken would impact us. Currently, we are having to pay the highest freight rates due to trade imbalances. Containers come, they go empty, and so we pay double the freight. Our premiums on freight is higher due to the insecurity in our maritime space. Thankfully, that has gone down, but they are yet to take off the high-level risk. And the new fuels, when introduced, would also increase the impact on how we do business. And so it is essential that the African countries go to table and present their front and make sure that the fund that will come thereof of the market-based measures are allocated to bring us up to speed in line with our developed counterparts.
How soon are we expecting African countries to go to the table to make a case for themselves?
Okay, so there is a meeting in March. The Intersessional Working Group on the
next month.
Greenhouse gas emissions is coming off in March. It is essential that African countries go and take active participation in those discussions. Following from that, the Marine Environmental Protection Committee, MEPC, their 80th session in July, which is expected to adopt the review strategy, will come off in July. And it is also advised that Africans go out in their numbers and then also
make their voices heard.
Yes, make their voices heard. That is what we can do.
Okay, I'll be coming back to you, and when I come back to you, I want to find out from you what the posture of African governments is in terms of going green, and whether they are buying into it, whether they are willing to. I mean, I know some countries may be very proactive in terms of this particular agenda. Others may be a bit laid back or laxed. I want to take your take on that when I come back. But let me go to Jacob and find out from you. Jacob, if you can tell us some of the key elements, between Ghana, Danish, relationships, and what you have done so far in terms of collaborations.
Well, the Danish ambassador said in the interview a few minutes ago that the maritime cooperation dates many years back, almost 10 years. But I will focus on the green elements.
Right, yes.
So the new thing is that we focus on green shipping as well. So I think the conference on green shipping in Africa is a good example. We have had an excellent partnership to prepare that conference. We have also had a very good collaboration in ensuring that Ghana is member of the Zero Emission Shipping Mission, and we are currently looking into which projects can Ghana contribute to. So we have high expectations for Ghana's participation in projects on seafarers, etc. So we believe Ghana can bring a lot of knowledge into this perspective and also the African view. Thirdly, we have informal dialogue on the IMO negotiations. We can discuss the submissions that are made. We can share notes and also have just an informal dialogue on how to proceed in the negotiations. And lastly, we share best practices, both in terms of energy efficiency, what can be done, what have we learned so far, and other initiatives that can accelerate the national green shipping.
Okay, I know that a lot of capacity building initiatives have been initiated by your government and the Danish Maritime Authority in African countries to bring them up to speed to be able to deal with the issues that arise in terms of wanting to go green and all that. Not only Ghana, but other African countries, if you agree. I just want to find out from you why that is, that you are fixated in Africa. I think I asked you that in a different style. I just want to find out again from you what Denmark stands to gain by making all these investments on the African continent and trying to encourage African countries to go green.
Well, we don't gain anything in particular economically, but our aim is to support the voices of Africa, to support the capacity development of the maritime organizations such as Ghana Maritime Authority. Because as Nana rightly said, Africa has to raise its voice. The African countries need to participate in negotiations in order to make sure that we have an outcome which is fair and equitable. So that's our main goal, that you should raise your voice in Africa, have your voices heard, and then live up to the IMO regulations, because we know it can be difficult to implement regulations. So that's another part, making sure that shipping is safe and runs smoothly. So these are the two main arguments for Denmark to be present.
Would you say you are satisfied so far with the outcomes of these investments that you are making in terms of capacity building and then all the other things that you're doing to ensure that we also go green? Are you satisfied with the outcomes?
Yes, very much. I think we have a very fruitful collaboration, and we've seen progress, for example, in the training of tugboat captains, but also in terms of other areas. So yeah, we are very happy. There are a lot of dedicated colleagues in the Ghana Maritime Authorities, and we have a very good collaboration.
Oh, absolutely. All right. So still stay with us. We'll come back to you. But let me come to you, Nana. I told you when I come back to you, I'll be finding out from you what the posturing of governments are, in terms of, going green in Africa. Like I said, some governments might be proactive. They would want to push it. Others would be a bit laid back or lax, and need that kind of, push in order to also come along.
Okay, so from experience, it's the African countries mostly are cooperative. If you look at the Paris Agreement, about 50 out of the 54 African countries have committed themselves towards green economies. That is a first step. We need to go further, and that is where there is some assistance that is needed, but generally African countries have committed themselves to the green initiative.
Okay, I know that Jacob in his earlier submission made mention of the fact that one of the things that they're doing is to ensure that vessels that are designed are green friendly, to go green and all that. Africa, we don't have those resources, like I said earlier on. I just want to find out from you, we don't have our own vessels. I mean, we now hear people are trying to, revive the Black Star Line, do all those things. These are private people and all that. It's not even government. I want to find out from you what role we are supposed to play as African countries, in terms of going green. Even though we don't own the ships, we basically rely on foreign vessels. Okay, vessels that fly our flags, yes, we might decide to say, okay, yeah, I mean, they're ours. But technically, we all know in reality that they are not. I just want to find out from what role African governments are supposed to play, maritime industry sector players are supposed to play to ensure that we make the most of this particular agenda of going green in shipping.
Okay, so for African countries, the best that we can do is to ensure that our post-it control systems are up to speed, that we ensure that we give them the necessary directives so that they are able to check the vessels that are coming in. Once the regulations have been passed, if you recall, in 2020, the sulfur cap came into force, and so now sulfur oxides have a 0.05% emission rate, and it's up to African countries or policy controls to ensure that vessels that are coming into their waters meet these standards. There again, with all this talk of green shipping, African countries and maritime administrations in particular should have a policy going forward as to the kind of vessels, the type of vessels that are coming onto their flags. They should begin to think about designing or giving energy efficiency design indexes for new vessels that would want to come onto their flag. And those are some of the initiatives that maritime administrations in the region can take.
And so from what you're saying, it means that we have the right, we reserve the right to reject vessels that do not want to go green. If they come to register on our flag, we have the right to reject it if they don't want to go green.
Yes, that is, yes, for a flag state, and any vessel that wants to go on your flag, the vessel has to meet your requirements. And so if it's a requirement under our flag registry that you should meet a standard, you need to meet it before you can get on our flag.
So would you say that the pivot around which this whole thing would revolve largely in Africa would be to utilize the port state control? To be able to regulate this and to ensure that we actually go green.
Yes, port state control for vessels that are just visiting your ports and going away, and then the flag state for vessels on your fleet, on your national fleet. So it's both ways.
Is there any special role that the maritime authorities in Africa can play? For instance, in Ghana, we have the Ghana Maritime Authority. What role can we play to help push this agenda?
To help in pushing this agenda, the Maritime Authority attends IMO meetings on behalf of Ghana should have an agenda to influence the decisions related to the global regulations. That is what we can do for now.
Okay. Let me come to Jacob. Jake, if you can hear me, your country owns one of the major shipping lines in the world, and that's Maersk. And Maersk has actually invested in eco-friendly vessels over the years. I just want to find out from you how important this is to the global chain in terms of green shipping.
I believe this is very important. Maersk is setting new standards and is acting like a first mover. So hopefully they can inspire other shipping companies to adopt similar ambitious goals. Just to mention that Maersk has recently made a new goal to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions already in 2040, which is 10 years earlier than previously announced. They have a target in 2030 to include 50% reduction in emissions per transported container in Maersk Ocean Fleet, and also a 70% reduction in absolute emissions from fully controlled terminals. So this is important. By setting new standards and by acting as a first mover, hopefully they can influence other companies. Also the fact that they have already ordered 19 vessels capable of running on e-methanol, that's a bold message, because this order will actually spur the production of zero-emission fuels. Because if there's no demand, if container companies don't buy these new vessels, why start producing the new fuels? So we need to get started, and Maersk has shown the way.
Would you say that Maersk is going this way as a result of the influence that you have brought to bear on it as Denmark or Danish Maritime Authority?
Well, I think we are a very ambitious government in Denmark. Obviously, we push Maersk, but they also have their own green agenda. They can see that it's actually a good business itself, and if they move first, they can also influence the development. So I think it's both ways. They do see it's a good business case, but also they are morally obliged to take action, because they do emit a lot of greenhouse gas emissions, and they are aware that they are part of the problem, but they are also part of the solution.
Okay, Jake, if Africa can come on an even keel with the developed countries like you, who are already doing so much in terms of green shipping. What do you think are some of the steps that we need to take as a continent to be able to match up?
Well, first of all, you need good framework conditions for private investments in port infrastructure. You need very efficient ports. You need infrastructure capable of providing new alternative fuels. And it takes a long time to be ready to handle these new fuels. So you need bunkering infrastructure. You need onshore power supply to be ready to become part of new green corridors, etc. So that's very important. Framework conditions for private investments, that's essential. But secondly, as Nana rightly said, both government but also government in Ghana, but also other governments in Africa need to start influencing the discussions on global regulation at IMO. Because only if you make your voice heard, you can get influence. So that's important that many African countries become more active in the negotiations in IMO.
All right. I'll still stay with us. I'll be coming back to you. And when I come back to you, I just want to find out from you what Denmark expects from governments, port authorities, and maritime authorities within Africa, in terms of this new whole arrangement of going green. But let me come to Nana in the studio and find out from you. I want to ask you the same question. What role the maritime authority expects, terminals, port operators and port authorities to play in all this arrangement?
Okay, so in pushing the green agenda, the ports play a critical role. Let me see if I can cite an example. If driving on the beach road, you see a number of vessels lined up in our waters, waiting to berth in our ports. So port authorities should be able to design a way in which it is operated on a just-in-time basis, so that vessels do not come, stay at anchorage, burn fuel. It all contributes to the greenhouse gas emissions. The port should also take initiatives to have onshore power supplies. Immediately the vessel berth, there should be an onshore interface, which would also reduce the levels of emissions. And then we can also look at automation. Automation and digitalization is one of the ways that we can improve on the green agenda. And so these are areas that port authorities should invest in, should look into, and then make the necessary arrangements. And then finally, bunkering in the region. The port authorities should look at introducing these new alternative fuels to bunker the vessels that would require bunkering from our region, and that is what can be done. On the part of the Maritime Authority, we need to create a regulatory environment for these things to thrive by issuing the necessary operational guidelines and the maritime circulars to aid investors and then the port authorities. That is the only way we can move forward in this regard.
I hear Jacob mention the issue of efficient port infrastructure, bunkering infrastructure, as well as stable power supply and all that to go. That means that you are really in sync with what he's proposing.
Yes.
Okay. This is I Import here on Metropolitan Television, and tonight we are discussing green shipping, and we're taking it from the African perspective and how Africa can match up with the global giants in terms of going green in shipping. With me in the studios is Nana Boache Buampong, he's Director of Maritime Services, Ghana Maritime Authority. Also joining us via Zoom is Jacob Hogard, he's Director of Climate and Green Transition, Danish Maritime Authority. They're the two gentlemen we're doing the discussion with tonight. We're going for a quick break. When we bounce back, we'll continue the show. Please do stay with us.
Every now and again, Goil makes good things happen. This time, Goil has introduced Super XP Ron 95, a higher grade fuel loaded with additives and yet sold at the same price as normal fuel. Goil Super XP Ron 95 enhances engine performance like never before. It maintains the engine by keeping it clean from carbon deposits. Goil Super XP Ron 95 is designed to burn slowly and thus improves fuel economy, making you save money after several kilometers. Gold Super XP Ron 95 gives you a smooth driving experience that is less vibrations. Fill up with Gold Super XP Ron 95. Now there's no need to pay more for any higher grade fuel. Goil has that sorted. Goil, good energy.
Electricity, pay your taxes. Our taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is. You still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, when put together, could give your community clean water or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
Impressive factory. If only I had listened to you, I wouldn't have been in this mess. That devastating fire virtually wiped out the whole factory and my warehouse.
Remember my misfortunes last year? Serene Insurance Asset All Risk Fire policy that I took were there to pay for my damaged stocks in the warehouse. And my machines that were affected by the floods have been replaced. My accident vehicle is back on the road thanks to Serene Insurance motor policy. Currently, my goods are on the high seas covered with their marine cargo insurance policy. I was just telling Ajima about Serene Insurance. Oh, Ajima, tell him more.
As a road contractor, I make sure I do my contractors all risk insurance for the project and then workers' compensation for all the workers on site. With Serene Insurance, they will make sure they will cover your unknown tomorrow today.
Serene Insurance, a new face of insurance. Call us now.
MPS Terminal 3 is Africa's new state-of-the-art container terminal at Tema Port. For manufacturers, agro-processors and traders, the new port means business can be done faster. This infrastructure boost will improve Ghana's port handling capacity, connect more trading routes, and oil the engine of growth for the economy, creating greater opportunities across all sectors as Africa's markets merge and become the largest trading bloc globally. MPS, we connect, you thrive.
All right, you're welcome back. This is Iron Port here on Metropolitan Television. Indeed, tonight we're discussing green shipping, the African perspective. With us in the studios, Nana Buampong, Director of Maritime Services, Ghana Maritime Authority. Also in the studios, also joining us via Zoom is Jacob Hogard, who is the Director in charge of Climate and Green Transition at the Danish Maritime Authority. Gentlemen, you're welcome back. Let me go to Jake on Zoom and find out from you. I said I'll come back and find out from you what your expectations or the expectations of the Danish government is of African governments, of maritime authorities, and indeed of port authorities in terms of going green. Hello, Jake.
I think that yes, I'm here.
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
I think the conference we had last week on green shipping in Africa clearly showed that there's a huge interest in accelerating the process. There were many good questions, many good ideas how to move forward, but also showing examples, for example, in South Africa, in Namibia, how to pave the way for the production of future fuels, future zero-emission fuels. That really inspired other countries to do the same. So I believe we're moving in the right direction, but we need to start with the low-hanging fruits. So energy efficiency measures and retrofitting vessels, that's a good way to start. Also, we've shown that by investing a little bit, you can easily save 8 to 10% of the energy used, both at ports but also on the vessels. So again, that's a good way to start on retrofitting ships and also to look at energy efficiency measures.
All right. Thank you very much. But still stay with us. Let me come to the studio. But before I come to Nana Boache, let me announce that the phone lines have been activated. My producers are giving me the green light to activate the phone lines. And so the number to dial is 020-552-8353, 020-552-8353. You can call in and contribute to the discussion. Nana, I just want to find out from you, in this whole arrangement, does the private sector have a role to play?
Yes, definitely. The private sector is the engine of growth. As government, we would create the enabling environment, and it's for the private sector to get involved with the investments in this area. It's a new field, and so we would encourage the private persons in Ghana to have a look into the opportunities that abound in this. In this space. We should have it at the back of our minds that this is where the world is heading, and so the early birds will make the most out of it. And so it's a call for private persons to have a good look at the investments in that area.
All right, so let me find out from you. It's been a few years since the Silver Cap, the Sulfur Cap was implemented. I just want to find from you whether there have been any achievements, any successes chalked.
Okay, so for the Sulfur Cap, according to the IMO, since its introduction in January 2020, there's been a reduction of about 77% in the emission of sulfur oxides into the atmosphere. 77% is a good number, and so it's been a huge success in that regard. So there have been new instruments have been introduced. The EEDI, Energy Efficiency Design Index, and then the Carbon Intensity Index have all been introduced with the aim of improving emissions from the industry.
Okay, Jake, let me come to you and find out from you what your assessment of the level of cooperation from African, stakeholders has been as far as the green agenda is concerned.
Well, I think we have had a good contribution, a good dialogue already. So I think African countries can participate in international partnerships and also in pilot projects. We can share best practices and we can introduce again pilot projects that can be replicated elsewhere. So that's one idea we can do. Secondly, I think we need to address some of the concerns that many of the countries in Africa had expressed at the conference. We need to bring those voices to the IMO and find solutions that are both ambitious, have an impact in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and are fair. So these are my views, and I believe we can support Ghana in these areas.
All right, so we just mentioned greenhouse gas emissions, and there's a message here that has come through. It says, my name is Fred. I found out that in the Netherlands, there are detectors within the port corridor that detects the carbon dioxide emissions of incoming vessels. Is that the case in Denmark too?
Not to my knowledge. It could come later, but we have not approved the or endorsed the global regulation on this area yet, so it could come in the future.
Okay, all right. This one says, in the view of the Danish Maritime Authority, which of the newer energy for vessels best suits the green objection? LNG, hydrogen, or methanol? Jake?
Well, LNG is definitely not the future fuel. It can, at the best, a transitional fuel. We believe e-methanol is a good place to start, but in the future ammonia would probably be a good option. But before we start producing a lot of e-ammonia, we need to have safety measures in place, because we know that ammonia is really poisonous, it's corrosive, so that has to be in place before we can start producing ammonia at scale.
All right, great. Still stay with us. We would come back to you. Nana, would you want to add your voice to this issue of, detectors within the port corridor to detect carbon dioxide emissions of vessels coming in? Okay. Is this something we can do on our continent or in Ghana?
Okay, so actually in Ghana there is we'll be doing a pilot sometime this year, and it's in connection with what a maritime sector cooperation we have with Denmark, and so some detectors would be installed at our ports, and it will pick samples of emissions from ships, and then it would advise what is being used on the vessels to assist our port state control officers. So in that regard, for Ghana, there is something already
in the pipeline.
And I think they will be installed by the close of this year or the first quarter of next year. I need to.
That was going to be my next question. How soon that is going to happen?
I need to check the deadlines, but there is something as part of our phase 3 on the strategic sector cooperation with Denmark, which started this year. There is something of that sort in it.
You might want to have a bite at the second question too, which talks about which fuel, which of the newer energies for vessels best suits our situation in Africa. Would you want to prefer any solutions, any comments?
So in Africa currently we have the hydrogen alliance, which is being tested by South Africa, Namibia, and other countries. But then we are also aware of some tests on ammonia. The fear with ammonia is the safety issues. And so everybody is waiting on how best to tackle the safety issues before we go into the production of ammonia. And so that is where we stand.
Okay. This one says, my name is Dasibre. Okay, that was Dasibre that asked about the type of fuel. Well, my name is Dasibre. I learned that there is a Tema LNG company now. How can the global shipping industry benefit from this? And how aware are authorities within Ghana's shipping sector of this and helping to put this facility out there? This one is from Manuel.
Okay, so I think that there is indeed a Tema LNG plant, but I think it's an FSRU. It is an FSRU. It's a floating storage unit. It is not, yes.
Okay. All right. So my next question to you, Nana, was going to be, considering that countries like Ghana are now tapping into the fortunes of the fossil fuels and all that, it's not at the time we are beginning to also warm ourselves into it and all that. And all of a sudden, it's like, okay, green shipping, we must join, the agenda and all that. Isn't this going to kind of like be a setback to us as a continent?
In my view, it shouldn't. It would only add to the cocktail of energy mixes. So I think it's rather a good warning, so that we start looking at other avenues of making revenue for the state, because invariably with the turn of events and the discussions, we are going to go green, and so to have the warning this early is a good enough omen. The transition is not going to happen in the overnight. In the levels of the current IMO levels, it's 50% by 2050 and net zero at the turn of the century. And so we have enough time to look at all the other energy sources. And I think we've been blessed with a number of renewable energy sources. We have the waters, the sea, the inland waters. We have abundant solar. And so it should rather spare the discussion on how to have a cocktail of energy supply, so that we are not overly dependent and then end up in the oil curse that has beleaguered a lot of our sister countries.
Right. Okay. Jacob, if you can hear me, I just want to find out from you how Denmark and some of your partners can help alleviate some of the concerns raised by Africa when it comes to the issue of green shipping.
Well, I think the most important thing is to listen to the concerns, understand the situation of countries such as Ghana, to know how would the new measures impact countries in Africa. And then secondly, to come up with joint solutions, joint ideas that are both efficient in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but also are fair and equitable. So here again, we need dialogue. We need to understand which kind of measures can be agreed on at IMO that are both efficient, fair, and equitable.
I just put a question to Nana Bwache here that Africa is beginning to explore its fossil, its natural resources. And one of them is the fossil fuel thing that we are enjoying. We have it in abundance, and that's actually one of the backbones of the economy, if you like, because it rakes in a lot of revenue for the country. Now, Denmark, together with the world, is telling Africa to go green. And so what becomes of the countries like Ghana, who are beginning to reap the benefits of this newfound wealth?
Well, I think the future is green. And all countries, to the best of their ability, should start investing in the production of renewable energy. Could be from solar, from wind, from hydro, as also mentioned by Nana. We have seen in Denmark that the renewable energy sources actually cheaper in the long run than the fossil fuels. So again, by making some strategic investments, by making good framework conditions to invest in renewable energy, it actually pays off. So again, the future is green, and in order to benefit from the economic possibilities, you need to wait 10 or 15 years, that's for sure.
Okay. There's a message here. It says, to be honest, being in the industry, I think it is expensive for ports to take in vessels based on their compliance levels, especially if competitors are not doing the same. Like if Ghana becomes too light on measures and neighboring ports aren't, we may lose traffic. What does the GMA think? This one is from Nana in Tema.
The question again, I didn't.
It says, to be honest, being in the industry, I think it is expensive for ports to take in vessels based on their compliance levels, especially if competitors are not doing the same. Like if Ghana becomes too tight on measures and neighboring ports are not, we may lose traffic. What does the Ghana Maritime Authority think?
In the view of the Ghana Maritime Authority, shipping is conducted on a level playing field, and so once the regulations have been adopted, they are implemented on the same level, and so I find it difficult for other neighboring countries to go lower on some of these things. There is a no more favorable treatment clause in most of these instruments, and so it will be difficult for anyone to go below the bottom line.
Okay, because it cuts across.
It cuts across,
you cannot be in your country and say you are not going to be.
No.
Okay. All right, that's in terms of compliance. All right, so let me come to you and find out from you, Jacob, what you think our potential is in terms of renewable energy sources or resources in Africa, and how we can harness this to support our green shipping agenda.
Well, I think recent studies from the African Green Hydrogen Alliance has pointed to a big potential for economic growth and job creation. If countries improve their framework conditions, start investing in renewable energy and investments in production facilities of alternative fuels and bunkering infrastructure. So there's a big potential, but you need to get started and the framework conditions in place. But obviously not all countries will be able to produce alternative fuels because some countries are better blessed with hydro potentials, with the solar potential, etc. So it's also important to be ready to provide these fuels as part of being a bunkering hub for the future green corridors. So there's a role for most countries, either as fuel producers or as bunkering hubs, or having simply very efficient and green ports. So again, there are possibilities for most countries, I would say, in Africa.
Okay, so there are those who think that we can do by 50% 2030. There are those who also think that we can go 100% by 2050 and all that. Can you bring us up to speed what you think as the Danish Maritime Authority in Denmark?
Denmark's position is that we should aim for zero emission by 2050. Because the fact is that the current strategy from IMO from 2018 is not aligned with the Paris goals. So we need to improve the level of ambition. We need to agree on efficient regulation that can bring down the emissions from shipping. If we don't do anything else than the current regulation, which is envisaged, the emissions from shipping will continue to rise. And that is simply not an option. We have to take bold decisions. We have to start acting and be more ambitious. And then we need to find solutions that are equitable and fair and make sure that we leave no country behind. But it's not really a choice to do nothing. We need to make sure that shipping is aligned with the Paris Agreement.
Now, gauging our current status and where we are at the moment, are you convinced that yes, we can meet these timelines?
Yes, I am convinced we can do a lot, but first of all, we need an ambitious strategy, and secondly, we need ambitious regulation. And as Nana rightly said, there are several measures being discussed and negotiated currently, also market-based measures that can generate revenues. And this it could be a carbon tax, it could be other economic measures that would limit the price difference between the fossil fuels and the future alternative fuels. So there are options on the table, but they have to be negotiated, and we need to find common ground on this area.
Okay. I also want to find out from you what next after the Africa International Green Shipping Conference, which was held here in Accra. What next? What's next on the radar?
From our end, we also have a more technical conference in Copenhagen in the beginning of March, where we are going to discuss informally with other IMO member states how to find a compromise later on in July. We are also going to have other meetings, both bilateral meetings, multilateral meetings, and then again come up with new ideas, new solutions in the IMO. So that's one track. But a second track is to continue all the public-private partnerships, our demonstration projects that can show that we can actually manage to promote zero-emission shipping. Because we need to show that it's possible. Otherwise, investors will not start investing in both new vessel designs and alternative fuels. So we have two tracks: regulation, global regulation, and innovation through public-private partnerships.
All right, we would want to let you go at the moment, but we just want to find out from you whether you have any last words for our viewers who are watching us right now across the world.
Just to say that I believe you've done a lot of good things, and the interest showed at the conference really is promising. So keep on the good work, be more active at the global discussions in IMO, and continue investing in energy efficient solutions and more efficient ports.
Thank you very much indeed, Jacob Hogard, who is Director, Climate and Green Transition, Danish Maritime Authority, for joining us here on our report here on Metropolitan Television right here in Ghana. We are deeply grateful to you. Thank you very much indeed, and have a super week ahead.
You're welcome.
Great. Thank you very much. So let me come to the studio, and Nana, if you permit me, we'll just go for a 2-minute international news break, and then we'll come back. You wrap up with us.
Sure.
Thank you, sir. So we'll go for the international news, and when we come back, we'll continue the show. Please stay with us.
Danish container shipping major Maersk is donating around 1,000 shipping containers to Turkey to help those in need affected by the massive earthquake that hit Syria and Turkey on February 6. The company said that the move follows close contact with the State Disaster and Emergency Management Authority of Turkey. Maersk noted that containers are already being converted into container houses and that the company plans to be donating more in the coming weeks. South Korean shipbuilder Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering, DSME, has secured a contract to build one liquefied natural gas carrier, which represents the shipbuilder's first order in 2023. Under the contract worth 314.5 billion won, which is equivalent to $248 million, DSME will build the LNG carrier for an undisclosed ship owner in Oceania. According to an exchange filing, The vessel is scheduled for delivery by the end of March 2027. Further information about the carrier's capacity and specifications was not revealed. Last year, DSME exceeded its order targets by 16%, winning $10.4 billion worth of orders. DSME and its compatriot shipbuilders secured the largest market share for high-value-added, eco-friendly vessel orders in 2022, bagging 58% of the total ordering tally for the year.
All right, so you're welcome back. Those were happenings in the port and shipping industry on the international stage. And this is our Port Hill Metropolitan Television. We're just about wrapping up, and we still have Nana Wampong in the studios, who's Director of Maritime Services at the Ghana Maritime Authority. I put the same question to Jacob, trying to find out from him whether he thinks that we're going to meet the timelines for the 2030 50% gas emissions and 2050 100%. Do you think that from the perspective of the Ghana Maritime Authority, these are timelines we can meet? He's quite convinced and he's optimistic that yes, we can do that. But from the African perspective,
from the African perspective, we tend to go with the current strategies that have been enumerated in the IMO's initial GHG strategy, and that is what we are working towards to do.
When you say GHG strategy, what does that mean?
That is the IMO's initial greenhouse gas strategy. That is what is being reviewed currently.
Okay.
And so we think it's ambitious enough, and then we will work towards achieving those aims.
And he also mentioned some, other energy renewable to better our lot as Africa. Do you agree? What are some of the other energy resources that you think that we can tap into?
Yes, for Africa, we have abundant solar, and so those solar and then hydro, those are areas that we need to look into critically. And so, as a country, the Ministry of Transport and the Ministries of Energy would begin discussions on how to move ahead when it comes to the green transition for shipping. How do we create the enabling environment for ports? How do we, what policies do we put in place to make Ghana a bunkering hub or a fuel supply nation when it comes to the renewable energies? And so those are discussions that will be held in the next couple of months. And
absolutely.
We will take a decision as a country.
I just wanted to also find out what some of the major events on the calendar of the Ghana Maritime Authority is for the year, if you have them off the top of your head, and then we just wrap up. We have barely 1 minute to go.
Regarding the green transition?
Not green transition, any some of the major events on your calendar.
Okay, so with the Ghana Maritime Authority, what comes readily to mind is the passage of the cabotage regulations. We have issued a maritime circular indicating that the implementation commences on the 1st of April. And yes, and so players in the industry should be conversant with that.
Okay, cabotage regulations.
Cabotage regulations,
okay.
Yes.
We'll come for details later.
Okay.
Thank you very much indeed. Nana Wampong, who is Director of Maritime Services at the Ghana Maritime Authority, joined us in studio for the discussion on green shipping. That's the African perspective. We're deeply grateful to you, sir, for joining us this evening. And we know as and when we require your services, you will always oblige us. We're deeply grateful, sir. Thank you very much for obliging us. And so, viewers, this is how we draw the curtain on this week's edition of Our Port Hill Metropolitan Television. Maximum thanks to our sponsors, Ghana Revenue Authority, Goil Company Limited, Serene Insurance, Ghana Link Network Services, and indeed Meridian Port Services. That's Goil PLC. Goil PLC, not Goil Company Limited. I would say thanks to our executive producers, Madam Esther Jividonko and Nana AC Soderberg. My name is Kennedy Mona. God willing, we shall bounce back next week with another wonderful edition of the show. Have a super week ahead, and thank you very much for watching.